Welcome to Dental Decoders, where we're cracking the code on all things dental operations. I'm your host, Brittany, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rebecca.
Each week, we'll dive into topics to help your dental practice streamline operations, overcome roadblocks, and reduce team burnout.
Whether you're a practice owner or an office manager or a team member looking for ways to improve your office, this podcast is for you.
We'll bring you insightful discussions, engaging interviews, as well as mini episodes packed with practical tips.
So sit back and relax as we dive into all things operations together. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and today we have a truly remarkable guest who's about to share her wealth of knowledge and expertise with us. Before we dig into our amazing guest, I did just want to share some news with all of our listeners. You will notice when listening to this episode that it is a little bit different of a format, and I am giving this interview solo. Our wonderful co-host Rebecca has decided that she is going to be focusing some attention in some different areas of her career for the time being, and for that reason she's going to take a step away from the podcast. We are super fortunate that Rebecca has agreed to guest co-host with us from time to time and will still be popping by to join us on a slightly different schedule than we're used to having her around. We're super excited for the opportunities that she's going to be exploring and so grateful that we do get to keep her on as a guest co-host from time to time. So it's definitely not goodbye, but more of a see you around situation. Without further ado, let's dig into our incredible interview today. Today we're joined by Sydney Robinson, who is a first-generation university graduate, and her journey to success is really just incredibly inspiring. Armed with a bachelor's degree in healthcare management, she learned very early on the immense value of open and honest communication, the power of grit, and the unwavering commitment to personal and professional integrity. But there's more to our guest than her impressive academic background. She is a Cornhusker implant, and when she's not making waves in the professional world, she finds joy in the simple pleasures of life, spending cherished moments with her beautiful family, sharing in the excitement of football, and even venturing into the world of podcasting and travel. With over 15 years in leadership roles, our guest's track record is nothing short of exceptional. For the past 6 years, Sydney's been at the helm of a prominent dental consulting and technology company, serving as the executive director of operations. In this role, she defines, implements, and revises operational policies and guidelines overseeing every facet of the organization's success. She is the architect behind the job descriptions, the talent scout who hires competent personnel, and the driving force behind employee training. She collaborates closely with department heads to craft sound financial plans and ensures company-wide operational compliance. In today's episode, we have the privilege of tapping into her vast expertise. We'll explore the art of team training and the secrets of fostering work independence within dental practices. Get ready to be enlightened and inspired by our exceptional guest. If you would like to connect with Sydney, check out her contact information in our show notes. And Sydney does have a fantastic offer for all of our listeners today. You can hear more about it at the end, but she is going to be offering a free coaching session to any of our listeners. You can grab the link to schedule that in our show notes below. Hi, Sydney. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. I am so excited to get to chat with you and share your wealth of knowledge with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I know we just recently met, through a mutual friend, but so far in the last couple of months has been just really great and a huge benefit of just getting to know you. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. One of the things that I like and what I thought when we first met, why I think we click so well, is we have very similar mission statements, core values, our our goals kind of align in what we're hoping to accomplish in the dental industry as a whole, with optimization and streamlining and really empowering the front desk teams to be able to do the most without feeling like they're doing too much. So I think that transitions us very nicely into one of the questions that I've been dying to ask you, which is your background in empowering front desk team members and leadership and offering team training. Can you tell me what some common problems or challenges that dental practices face when it comes to bringing on new team members, and why it is so important to have a structure in place when it comes to training and onboarding?
Yeah, that is the $1,000,000 question, right? Like, what is what is consistently the challenge that offices face? And to be completely transparent, it goes back to leadership expectations. When we're hiring team members, most of the time we hire because we're needing someone to fill a spot, whether someone has left the practice, quit, or was terminated, and we didn't have anyone to fill in, or we're doing a startup and we're just needing to get a warm body in there. A lot of the times we hire as leaders, because I'm guilty of this as well. We hire just to get someone in to help us because we feel as if the workload is overwhelming. So we hire while we're stressed, while we're in distress, right? And I feel like that is the first problem that I see. Now, elaborating a little bit more on that, when we hire in distress, then we turn around, we get just someone in there who at least have some of the qualities that we're looking for. And because in dental practices, it is really difficult to carve out the time to go in and train that person adequately. So what tends to happen is if I hire someone, especially a leader or a clinical staff team member, we throw them right into the fire. We just put them right in the ocean or right into that fire and say, okay, swim or don't burn. And that is the next thing that I see, is that we just throw them in and we show them around, they shadow someone, and that's it. Now we expect for them to really join our team, adapt our culture. Well, how are they supposed to do that if we haven't set that expectation? If we haven't told them what their day-to-day responsibilities are going to be, and then on top of that, train them on our ways. Because what tends to happen again is we will hire someone who has skill, who has the clinical skills, and they're bringing over those skills from another practice, the way that they did that at that practice. And it may not align with our core values. It may not align with our patient flow or patient base, or no one else have any idea how that other practice did it. And now this person holds the keys to the kingdom, to the castle. And so hiring is definitely the very first thing that I see, is the way people are hiring and getting them into the practice. So I do find it that people find it difficult to really have that ideal team, that rock star team, because of those two things that I just mentioned. But let's just say you have a veteran team, right? The next thing that I see, the next phase of that is, well, we've been doing this for a couple of years. We have team members that have been with us for a couple of years, but maybe it's still not flowing efficiently. Maybe it's still not going, the culture may not be where it needs to be, or not everybody does the same things. Or again, that one person, if Sydney was to leave the office and go on a trip to Jamaica, is the office going to fall apart? If that answer is yes, then typically, again, what I see is it goes back to now training, processes, and systems. And so what I find is a lot of practices struggle with processes and systems. They struggle with communication between the front and the back. They struggle with communication from the entire team with the practice owner or associate. And so it's really important when we go in and we're hiring, we make sure that we have a foundation that is so solid that no matter what, whoever comes into our organization, everybody knows the game plan. Everybody knows what our mission, vision, core values. Everyone knows why we wake up in the morning and we go and spend 8 to 10 hours with people that are not our significant others, our children, while we go and we do this, and we're all happy to do it. So I find that as long as you have that solid foundation and you have a mission, vision, core values, and foundational principles, you'll find that your office will just naturally have a positive culture and then that accountability. So if I know that my mission is to come in and I want to build a profitable dental billing department. So how am I going to do that? It's not just me. It's going to be also me collaborating with our hygienists, our dental assistants, because you're not just one person. Someone has to enter in the treatment. Someone has to say whether or not that crown was done 5 years ago or they're coming for, or is old existing. And so I find that now it goes into just being able to communicate effectively and collaborate with your team members. So those are the challenges that I see. And when we're going into these practices, those are what we're trying to accomplish.
Speaking all of my love languages. Core values, systems, operations, all these things are like, I'm feeling so seen. So I want to kind of circle back to the very first point you made, where a lot of practices are hiring in a point of desperation, and they're like, we just need somebody now. I don't care who. How can offices combat that? What systems can they put in place, especially now where everybody is trying to hire and the staffing crisis that we've been going through doesn't seem to be really going away? How can we combat that kind of in between catch-22 place of like, we need somebody now, but we also need somebody who's going to provide longevity and be a culture fit for our practice?
Right. The biggest thing is going to go back to making sure that whomever you have in your practice understands what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? If you're trying to make sure that you have that longevity team member, you want to coach that team member throughout their career with your practice. You want to find out their personal why. You want to find out what drives them, what wakes them up in the morning, why are they coming and they want to work here at this job. So again, it goes back to the foundational principles, and you build a system around that. You build your interviewing questions around that. One of my favorite is, if I'm hiring someone, what is my ideal team? What is the ideal person that we want in our practice that's going to fit? There's a two-part answer to your question. So when we do that, we want to make sure that we build those questions. What is humble, hungry, smart? What does that mean to you? Because that's something that's important to us. And we try to ask questions based off of that. So when we do get someone into the practice, I kind of answered this a little bit backwards, so please forgive me. But once we've got our interview questions and we feel as if we're ready to go, we can start hiring. We have a conversation with our entire team. So if I'm hiring because someone just left a practice really suddenly, we weren't expecting it, or we do see sometimes that we've had such growth that we weren't ready for the growth, that we weren't ready to open these floodgates. And now we find that, oh my goodness, we don't have enough assistants, hygienists. We just opened and we didn't expect for so many patients to want to come into our practice. You have to take a step back, review your schedule, and then you want to make sure that within the chaos that you're finding order. So if I just left and went on to bigger and better things, right? And I was your dental assistant or I was your hygienist, what is it going to take for us to have a good day? What is it going to take for us to be productive? Sit down with your leadership team, sit down with your team, whomever that is, whoever's in control of the schedule. And as the practice owner, you have to ask yourself those two questions. Well, in order for us to have a good day, we know that we just lost an assistant. We know that we just lost a hygienist. Am I able to get a temp in to cover for this person? And if so, when can I get a temp to help cover? If that's not an option, okay, can I move the schedule around that's going to accommodate being short staffed? That's always an option, by the way. So that shouldn't be, that's always an option. The reason why that's always an option is because you do not want to burn out your team. When someone is out sick, when someone is away because a sudden life change or someone just leaves the practice, I feel as if a lot of times we think that, we still have to manage 4, 5, 6 columns. That's impossible. We cannot do that. And then for a long stretch of period of time, especially if you're struggling to find that ideal team player, right? Because it's going to take you time to find that right fit. And you're not going to hire out of desperation. You've got to make sure you adjust your schedule so that your team is still wanting to get up in the morning and come to the practice. You can't burn them out thinking that, oh, well, Sydney can just work through her lunch break. That's not efficient.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to want Sydney to stay for 5, 10, 20 years. That's going to burn Sydney out, and she's going to feel unappreciated, because at that point, what she's going to see, or he is going to see, is that, well, such and such can go and have a lunch break, because guess what? That team member may not have affected that particular department. It may be the front office who is still, oh, things are still going great for us up here. We still fully staff, or vice versa. Things in the back are going great. Why can't they? We don't realize it starts to create resentment. So from a leadership standpoint, from an ownership standpoint, you have to ask yourself, what is it that we can do so that we can have a great day? And it's not about just production. It's also about your team culture. And you have to put your team first and not just the production, because that will come on its own. And then you adjust your schedule to make sure that you're meeting your goals. So if I know that my assistant is out, my hygienist is out, but we still have to meet our daily goals, well, that means that we're going to focus on high production. We're going to focus on, okay, instead of having 7, 8 fillings, right? Let's now start to schedule more strategically to goal while still expecting that this person is gone. So you have to sit down and you have to communicate, collaborate with your team and say, here's the goal. We're short staffed. Here's our schedule. What can we do so that we can have a good day? In return, what you'll find is not only does Sydney feel appreciated, but she feels as if her ideals are valued. She feels as if, oh, wait, my office manager or my owner really does appreciate me and wants me to help them fix this problem. And I do talk a lot about behavioral science. It also is a reward because it puts them into, human beings are naturally inquisitive. We all know that. Mm-hmm. It puts them into something called a discovery mode. And discovery, you always want to ask questions. So if you're asking your team to help you with this chaos and you're trying to create order, it's not all on you. Another side effect of doing this is, as a leader, you no longer feel that pressure as if you weigh the weight of the office on your shoulders. It's all one collective big unit. So the short answer to that is, when you are hiring and you want longevity, you have to make sure that first, when you see and find yourself inside of chaos, where can you create order? How can you still have a good day? And what is it going to take for us to still be productive in the practice, knowing that we're going to have something happen, right? And then making sure that when you do hire someone, you're putting the right person in the right seat.
One of the things that I see with a lot of practices that I work with is kind of what you touched on earlier, where they don't expect that rapid growth. And then during that time of rapid growth, core values, mission, vision, all of that goes out the window because they're just trying to keep their head above the water, and they feel like they have to keep operating in this fight or flight mode. So I love that you talk about using that as your central focus, because I can 100% agree with the concept of your employees are going to want to stay if you stay true to who you are. One of the other things that you talk a lot about is how to promote independent work inside the practice. So empowering your team members to feel like they can make decisions and they can have workflow that is independent after they've gotten through that training phase. They feel empowered in their practice. How could an office who maybe that is not their current flow, they typically have micromanagement situations in their practice, how could an office that is currently in that type of boat start to bridge the gap and form an environment that promotes employees being more independent and more involved in the decision making on a day-to-day?
Yeah, as a fellow recovering micromanager, I think that I can speak for all micromanagers and really how you avoid that. And I like to call it encouraging, empowering independence in the workplace. And this can be applicable to any office, whether it's pedo, whether you're a specialty practice, any practice can really implement these simple strategies, which one, it goes right back to communication. So if you have, let's say that we have a biller, right? This person's responsibility is to make sure that they call all insurances, find out, check up on claims. They're doing appeals. They're doing sending over, any type of negotiations or entering fee schedules, right? And I, as an office manager, I go to my biller and I say, hey, this claim was denied and I need you to send over an appeal to this insurance company. So I've already given what I need this person to do. The biggest thing is you want to start teaching your team members these simple steps. When you're coming back and you're giving me that task, instead of never coming back and letting me know what happened or coming back and telling me the results, make sure that you give the action. So, hey, I was able to contact the insurance company. I was able to send over an appeal. However, I wasn't able to talk to someone. I end up sending an email and a fax. So I am going to follow up. So now you want to give a solution or resolution. I'm going to follow up with the insurance company in 2 weeks and find out if they received that claim so that we can get this paid. Then, if needed, follow up, follow through. So this person said they're going to follow up in 2 weeks. It is going to be super important to make sure that you hold them accountable and come back to you and say, hey, I give them the opportunity, of course, to come back to you in the 2 weeks, but set a reminder. I love using, I have Apple everything. So if someone said, hey, I'm going to follow up on a task in X amount of time, I'm going to set a reminder for me to go in and check. I'm not going to bother that person in between time. I know that I have 2 weeks in a day to reconnect with that person, right? And that's with anything. Let's say you have an assistant and they're doing a crown prep and, hey, doc, I'm finished with setting the temp on this. The next step is I just need you to check it. It's the same form of communication. So instead of the assistant going in, sitting the the temp or impression, whatever the case may be, on the table and just waiting for the doctor to magically appear, I'm going to go to that doctor and say, hey, I'm ready for whatever it is that I need. It's that open line of communication. So you have to make sure that you have your action, your solution or resolution, and if there is a follow-up that's needed. So if you just remember just those 3 things when you're communicating or you're tackling a task or whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing independently in the office, that's the first thing that I like to teach all team members, not just leaders, is how to communicate in that form or fashion. Because what I find is for our recovering micromanager, if I know that I told Sydney to go and take an impression, a night guard impression or something like that for me, and I don't hear anything back, I'm going to go and say, hey, did you go and take that impression? It's now on my mind. I'm also now stressed out about it because I was like, oh, wait, it's been like 45 minutes. I haven't heard anything. The patient's still sitting back here. What's going on? So if I know that someone gave me that task, I'm going to go to that person and say, hey, Sydney, I was able to get that night guard impression. However, doc did see something. I'm waiting for the doctor to come in and take a look at an x-ray, and then we'll be able to walk that patient up. That's simple communication. And I know the life gets in the way. We're busy, we're short staffed, and sometimes we cannot communicate that. Again, there's too much technology not to be able to send a simple message or sing a ping to your front office. Is that line of communication that really helps create independence within the practice.
I love that. I also am a recovering micromanager, and my recovery is a little rough. So I'm going to actually use those steps in my day-to-day now because I want to be the person who empowers my team to make decisions, and I don't want to have to micromanage everything. But I think that open line of communication and just using even those 3 points is really going to make a big impact in my team. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah. And so I want to actually, let's dig in on that for just a quick second, because I know this is really important. So I can talk about these 3 steps, right? And you and me both being a micromanager, when you find that you're micromanaging, tell me the situation that you feel like you have to jump in. Give me a scenario.
Most of the time for me, it's when I delegate a project and then I don't ever hear what's going on with that project. So very much like the instance that you gave, if I say, hey, Susie, can you handle the claims for this client for me? And then I trust Susie to take it over. I don't know if where she's at in that process. I don't know if she understood even the project that I gave her. There's no communication back to me. So then I get very anxious because it's at the end of the day, it's my name on the door. So if it's not being done well, I've got no one to blame but myself. And that's when my micromanaging tendencies tend to show their claws.
And that is so typical, whether it's in your line of business when you go in and you're working with these practices and you're helping with the revenue cycle or open dental training, or you're actually working in the practice.
Mm-hmm.
The scenarios are still the same. And so I always like to take a step back, and I like to take extreme ownership in my action and how I communicated that. Did I give them all the tools and resources so that they can complete the task? Did I allow them adequate amount of time? Did I set a realistic deadline to get it done? And did I give them the goal of that task? So if my goal was, hey, Sydney, I need your help. I need you to take this impression for this patient. Such and such is out sick. Can you do that? Yes. Okay. When you take this impression, I just need you to bring them back up so that I can get them scheduled for their next step. And here's the next step. Great. I've given them all of the information that they need to go in and take it. Now, let's say took the impression, but didn't know how to send it out to the lab. They just came to me and said, all I did was take the impression. No one ever told me that I needed to send it to the lab. Only thing you told me was to take the impression. In my mind, I thought I gave them all of the right tools, right? But in actuality, I didn't tell them the full steps. So that's when you go in and you take ownership in your actions in the way that you delivered that task, but also coach your team on it. Because now when I go in, you know what? You're absolutely right. I didn't tell you. In the future, ask me questions. Encourage them to ask you questions. Encourage them to come back like, hey, I can take that impression. Is there anything else outside of taking the impression that you need me to do? You know what? Actually, yes. When you take the impression, can you make sure you box it up? FedEx is going to be here. Then now I've just delivered all of the information. And sometimes I know in the day-to-day that we just kind of miss it. But that's when you also give a really great coaching lesson to your team member and say, you know what, in the future, if you think of these things, definitely come to me, because it completely dropped my mind that I just assumed, and that's not okay for me to do it. So not only am I humbling myself down and saying, you know what, I did not tell you that. I just assumed that you knew it. You cannot do that. That's not okay. And then 2, you want to coach your team, or let's say vice versa. Maybe this person didn't know how to take an impression. And so I also find that when someone doesn't know how to do something, they spend a little bit more time on it because they didn't know how to do it, or they didn't know all the steps. So if I find that that's what happened, instead of getting upset or angry or taking over that task, I ask them just one simple question. Tell me about your process and how were you going to get this done, or how did you get this done? I want to see what I can do to help you in the future, not only so that I feel as if I'm wasting your time and I want you to be more efficient. That way you don't feel stuck, but also so that I can just make sure that I'm communicating effectively. And then we have a real open, good conversation. Mm-hmm. And I would find that, I didn't know where to submit the claim. I didn't know that I needed to download this lab slip in order to be able to send that impression. You know what? That's great. Let me show you where you can find it. Again, instead of me going in and doing it and fixing it, I'm going to show them how to do it. That way in the future, if I delegate that task again, guess what? We won't have this again. So just a little bit of time, a little bit of coaching in the beginning is going to save you so much time and effort at the end.
I couldn't help but think while you were talking, just like 2 days ago, I had a conversation with my husband where I was like, yeah, we should get milk. And then like we went about our daily business, and that was me in my mind saying, hey, grab some milk. He did not grab any milk. And then I was like, well, I asked you to grab milk. And he's like, no, you didn't. You said we should get milk. That's not. And so I made the assumption he knew. He had no idea what I was trying to say to him. So I like that. Not only is that important to do in your practice, but just in life in general, assuming that people know what you're trying to say and assuming that you're communicating appropriately might not always be the right answer on that one.
Right. I love that you brought in life, because the same thing happened. Although I teach this in a dental practice, I had asked my husband, hey, can you help me with laundry? His definition of helping me with laundry was taking a pile of clothes, dumping it into the washing machine, and leaving it for 2 days, because I forgot that I asked him to help me with laundry. So that's all he did, and didn't see that there was clean clothes right there that I needed help folding. So it just goes back to that effective communication. Hey, can you help me with laundry? I just need you to put this load of clothes in, take these clothes out of the dryer, and can you fold these clothes for me? Those are the details that you truly do need to give when you're delegating tasks.
Absolutely. So we wrap every single episode of Dental Decoders with our famous question. So I would love to ask you, what is your decoding moment, or the secret code that you've learned in your career that has made a significant impact on your career and the practices that you work with?
I think I kind of given it away, in the beginning here, but for me, one of the biggest things that's helped me as a recovering micromanager is extreme ownership and giving details. Just simply communicating in that action, solution, resolution, and if needed, follow up, follow through. When I found that I started to do those things, even just not as a leader or a business owner, but as a team member, if someone did tell me, hey, go get the milk, I'm going to ask questions. What kind of milk do you need? When would you need that milk by? What is the milk for? You're cooking with the milk, so I can determine how much milk you need. I'm going to now follow up with questions, and I'm also going to let that person know what it is that I did, when I did it, the solution, whether or not I completed that task, or hey, you know what? I wasn't able to because they were out of milk, went to 4 different stores, couldn't find it. So I'm just going to wait till tomorrow and see if they get a delivery. There we go. And I found that not only do I communicate better with my team, with my spouse, and as a leader, I found that I'm much happier. I found this piece where the weight of the company is no longer on me, and I now have an independent team that can truly GSD.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing so many awesome takeaways with our audience. For everybody who wants to get in touch with you, I am going to put the links in our show notes below. Also, Sydney has a fantastic offer for everyone listening. I will put the link down in the show notes, but she is offering a free coaching session with her for all of our listeners. So definitely do not hesitate to click that link. It is a fantastic opportunity to really get to pick her brain and learn from one of the best in the industry.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And if anyone, definitely wants to schedule a free coaching call with me, I am so happy to help. And I look forward to working with you, Brittany. I'm so excited for our new partnership.
Me too. I can't wait. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.